Hello, welcome into a new edition of the Chi Time Collective with me, Clara Apollo, Qigong instructor and energy explorer and lover of life and a lover of dance and sound and all sorts. And on this episode of the Chi Time Collective, Your Energy Matters, I'm going to be talking to Dave Rock, who is a writer and spoken word artist, and he helps others to live their gifts in a verbal form, speaking, using their voice, but also having a healthy, whole, sustainable relationship to living our gifts anyway. So fascinating to speak with Dave. But what we're going to be looking at particularly is something that both of us have been quietly having to deal with in the background, and that is of just losing the use of our voices. And when we met up recently at a Jamie Catto workshop in Glastonbury back, I think it was over the winter solstice, we started to talk about this topic and how it really, to have your voice curtailed by, sometimes don't even know what it is quite a scary thing to happen to you, and it takes you down all sorts of interesting pathways. So we're going to talk into this today. So let's welcome Dave Rock into the Chi Time Collective. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Clara. Thank you.
Hey, so when did this first happen to you? When did you realize there was something going on with your voice that wasn't right?
I remember very exactly when it happened, but I've always had a very elastic relationship to time. So I'm not sure if it was 5 years ago or 6 or I'm not sure. But I was living in Dublin and I was teaching flow speaking workshops and a bunch of other things. And all of a sudden, one week, I felt really overwhelmed being there. And I decided to leave. And within about 4 days, I had packed up and left the city and moved back down to the west of Ireland. And I was feeling completely worn out in every sense. And I decided to stop teaching for a while, to completely disappear from the internet, and actually to just become an improvisational poet on the street. I would stand there, I would talk to people about a loved one or a thing that they loved or a thing that they loved about themselves. And then I would speak a freestyle poem for them on the spot that they could record, and keep and so on. And the exact details are a little bit lost in the mist of time, but sometime within around the same week that I made that decision, I woke up one morning and I couldn't talk.
Wow.
My voice was completely gone.
Wow.
I say morning, I mean, it was about maybe 4 or 5 a.m. It was dark. I was in bed. So I was lying there in bed and I was just trying to make a sound and I couldn't. There was nothing there.
So scary. We sorry, there's the frog in the throat coming up as if to say yes, clearing your throat. We take our voices for granted, don't we? They're part of us that we're used to using for whatever, and especially yourself, as you say, it was part of how you expressed your creativity, your gifts, and also it was your work and how you encourage others to do that, and to have that withdrawn from use. It was like, where did that take you to, Dave?
It was very scary to start with, for sure. There was this there was a sense of shock, and there was a deep sense of, not really knowing how to live, who I would be. And this fear and sense of shock, then over the coming week or 2 weeks, it really alternated with very profound waves of peace. Because when I started to, try to wrestle with all of the conundrums of my life that I had been wrestling with ever since I became an adult, what shall I do for work? Where, will I go here? Will I go there? Will I do this? Will I do that? In the absence of a voice, all of that wrestling was just nonsense. So suddenly there was no point in trying to make decisions anymore. There was no point in planning. There was no point in really projecting into the future at all. And there were times where it was incredibly peaceful and just liberating to be in that. Um, I met a woman some maybe 3 or 4 days before my voice disappeared, and we were going on a kind of, not exactly officially a date, but a kind of a date. And I was starting to imagine how to go on a date without being able to speak. And I started to just think of lots of really fun things, about like writing notes and using sign language and other kinds of things. And I started to actually feel like very um, cheerful and playful about the whole thing.
Mm.
But my voice was really just, came back, and then it was really just coming and going. And I was able to talk, but not talk so much. And alongside that sense of acceptance that has been there to some degree ever since, because like I was saying, it's been years now.
Mm.
There's been lots of times where I've been really angry, really scared, felt very isolated. I had a long stretch of time where I couldn't really work at all. I was coaching people, but it was so physically painful that I was angry the entire time I was coaching,
Mm. Mm.
which is obviously not good for anyone.
Yeah. No, I'm so with you on this. We're here with Dave Rock, unpicking what happens when your voice gets withdrawn from use, not due to a viral or bacterial infection, but due to stress, due to strain, due to the system just needing to have a rest. And there's a lot of component factors here, aren't there? I mean, you said 5 or 6 years ago. I think for me, it was probably about 8 years ago when I chose to become home free. I just had enough of teaching 15 Qigong meditation classes a week, and I just knew that I couldn't carry on. So I had to do something radical. But from that place of, that decision, maybe a bit similar to you were overwhelmed and overworked. Your system, you're tuning into that something needed to change, a shift needed to happen. And a situation happened with me that I was singing in the car, because I love to sing in the car. I still am now. I've regained my voice back and so glad to be able to sing, although it's a bit ropey in some areas, but never mind. At least I can get, it feels good to be able to do that again. But at this time I was just singing some mantras or something, and I was on my way to my friends in the New Forest. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I had the windows open, and I was breathing in the forest air, and I was taking lungfuls of air and singing my heart out. But the thing is that I was also I'd been sucking a Ricola sweet, to sort of, to get my vocal cords going, and it was still in there. And there was this tiny little slither, and I took a big breath in, and the little slither of sweet disappeared into my trachea, into my lungs, and I'm like, I didn't just do that, did I? That was really silly. Oh no. And pull the car over, coughing, trying to get it up, going, what have I done? I've damaged myself. What's happening here? And I just went into a coughing fit, and obviously the system was trying to get rid of it, but also there was a panic there of like, I've inhaled something that I'm not supposed to inhale. I mean, it could quite easily have been a fly because I had the windows open, but no, it's just a little bit of sweet. So there was that scaredness. You could feel the adrenaline kicking in, everything starts contracting, and you're not thinking sensibly, but something's occurred. And from there, I thought I need to go and get this looked at, see if there's damage. Anyway, you go onto a bit of a track of what could happen. And I remember sitting hours later in the A&E department of Southampton General Hospital when there were people around there with far worse things going on. And I thought actually all I needed to do was to sit quiet and still and know those magical little cilia in my trachea and lungs were going to push whatever needed to come back up. But what had happened, so I then discharged myself and went back, and but I had an interview to do the next day, and it was like, how am I going to do this? So what had happened was the vocal cords got swollen because of all the coughing. And so it was actually became very scary, like constriction in my, it's not easy to swallow or to breathe particularly easily. So I was taking cough mixtures and things just to sort of soothe it down. But it brought my attention to my throat chakra, and about how much I feel like I give away a lot, the idea that I didn't want to teach as much. I felt that using my voice, it was straining it. And here I had an extreme situation that occurred that I actually damaged my vocal cords. And that was really scary. What happens if I can't use my voice? I can't communicate. And I got really cross, I got angry about it. What's happening? I also got very jealous of other people that were just using their voice willy-nilly for random things. And did you get a bit of that as well?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking how cavalier people are about having such a magnificent instrument.
Yes.
It's a product of millions of years of evolution, and they're just using it to talk rubbish.
I know. I know. But like you were saying, there's different components coming in here. So I don't know if anyone that's listening, that if you've been troubled with losing your voice, or you're don't really know why it's happened. So I felt it happened because I'd injured it through this coughing. But I'd also, a couple of weeks earlier, literally about 3 weeks earlier, my dear auntie, who was an opera singer, she died of throat cancer at the age of 88. She was my dear Auntie Joan. And I just thought, this is really like sort of sign you've got to look after your voice, it's so important. But there was that emotional component of something that I didn't quite understand. If you had things like that going on around your voice as well as the overwhelm.
Yeah, it's for sure. It still feels like a mystery to me in some ways. That there are
Yeah.
some very clear cut, physiological things, which I think I do have silent reflux, and I think, that plays a part in it. Um, but at the same time, I mean, I really learned to be silent as a child. I had like a quite abusive childhood, and I had to really learn to watch everything that I said and everything I did in general. And then as an adult, I really worked on kind of reclaiming and expanding my capacity to express myself very, very freely. And I had this huge energy and this huge freedom and this real joy, like this very unadulterated pleasure in expressing myself, which is really why I taught, so much. It's why I just love to give other people that drunken feeling of just letting loose. And at the same time, there has still always been some a fear in me of becoming too well known, too successful, too prominent, that's not safe. And I've noticed often when I've approached a certain level of success as a writer or a performer or as a teacher, in lots of fields, I would just lose interest and move on to something else.
Mm.
And so it does also feel like there's some part of me that still feels like it's definitely not safe to express myself fully and freely too much of the time. It's like, out of the bottle a little bit and then, okay, back in the bottle.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And, although I definitely do have issues with acidity, those issues are mainly caused by the way that I eat and drink and by stress. And all of those things are down to the choices that I make day to day,
Yes.
which are driven, by the shadow stuff, by the
Mm.
trauma, by the fear, by all these stuff that's going on inside there.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you there as well, because I had no idea about silent reflux. I wasn't aware of any heartburn. I didn't have any regurgitation going on. And yet when eventually, several years later, I did go to the doctor, because I actually went to live in Austria for a while. So I just let that episode calm down and thought it would heal itself, but it didn't. And she told me, the consultant I went to see told me that I had really bad scarring on my larynx, and it had come from silent reflux. And honestly, Dave, it was a complete shock to me. I'm like, where did that come from? I guess they call it silent reflux for several reasons. Like, first of all, it creeps up on you silently, and then it also invites you into to silence. And to begin with, it was helpful to have a diagnosis, but then the options on how to treat it in mainstream medicine just didn't sit with me. Not only did I did give it a go, I must say, I did try a proton pump inhibitor until it made me so constipated it just wasn't worth it, and I thought there has to be another way. And it's taken me a while to research that. And in the second half of this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about silent reflux as well and our journey with that. But I think when something creeps up on you out of the blue, and there's all sorts of disorders that this can happen to, but when it's actually to do with how you express yourself, there's this cutting off. I'm not allowed to do this. So both of us as children had to be seen and not heard, and be very careful with what you said because you could get smacked and all that kind of stuff. And yet also, like I was a performer, and it was like when I was on the stage and I was singing or chatting or whatever, it was so natural. It was just wanted to ooze and flow through me. But also the very similar thing that I didn't know about you, that as soon as you start putting your head above the parapet and people start recognizing you, it's like, oh no, I'll just disappear again. I'll just sort of nip down and be quiet. And so it's an interesting one, isn't it, to have the dynamic of yang expression and yin inside, because actually that's quite a natural way, isn't it? But it's getting it into a healthy, natural way rather than a trauma-induced, reactive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is why I always say that I help people to live in a sustainable relationship with their gifts, because, that's the journey I'm always on myself. And,
Yes.
we could look at people in the world. There's so many people living on the extreme of really hiding away, not speaking up, not stepping out, not showing themselves. And then there's people who are completely trapped at the opposite end of the spectrum, where they're just always on a stage of some kind, even if it's just in their imagination. And, there are people who are enormously well known and who can conduct this enormous energy when they're doing whatever they do as artists or politicians or whatever, but they don't actually know how to be a normal human being and be this big thing at the same time, and to move between those two things healthily. And the contrast between how you can be seen when you're shining up on that stage and how you feel, when you wake up in the middle of the night or you look in the mirror or whatever, I think, it can really destroy people. And that's why there's so much depression and addiction and so on with people who are really well known for living their gifts. And it's a capacity to step into really fully embodying that, amazing creative energy that we all do have, to be really bright, to be really out there, and to be able to fluidly move back to being, a grounded, normal human being, not some big deal, not some specialness, just being a person, and being able to know, this moment is calling for me to be big and shiny. This moment is about being small and quiet, and not having any fixity, any stuckness.
Yeah. Or expectation of that, I should be behaving like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's the spectrum between the expressive yang and the quiet yin. It's the flavors in between that are also aspects of how we can express ourselves, and different people bring out different qualities of ourselves as well, isn't it? So we respond differently to the energy, to the whole chi, because your energy matters. And that I'm getting a telepathy thing here. Telepathy won't really work well on radio, but I did find that when I couldn't use my voice as much, I noticed that my awareness was opening more to the inner tuition, to the tuning into the energies and being able to, thought forms and things like that. I think when you're just focused on one aspect of communication, you tend to overuse it. It's like the eye is just always looking with the eyes, overstimulation. But when you lose one of the senses, the other ones come on board, and some. Did you find that happen to you as well?
Absolutely does sometimes. Yeah, it does happen. I also just, I can really, really take life in. And I'm much more attentive to just how I am being with people if I'm not able to talk much. Am I holding myself in anxiety or in judgment, or am I being calm? Am I being present? Am I being open? And noticing how people really respond to that. They really respond to my way of being, even if I'm saying nothing.
Yes, yes, yes. We respond to the energy that we emit. And that is, I feel, a truer form of expression or of communication than these misleading words are. Although we're doing our best with our words here, we might mess them up a little bit, but generally, but words can manipulate, and pure sound, like these sound bowls that I have close to me all the time, they remind me of how sound can be very clear and very pure. But your energy, when that is being
Yeah.
that it can't lie. It can't be anything but how it is. I guess it's how you perceive it. It's how you pick it up, isn't it? How it's received.
That's exactly it. So when if I'm coaching a speaker or a performing artist or whatever, when I'm working on these things for myself, my principle is that, our message, our only true message, is how we are choosing to relate to ourselves, to the audience, and to the moment that we're in. And all of that is happening before we speak. And then there's an energy that we embody in our voice, and it doesn't actually matter what we're talking about. In some ways, to some degrees, in some ways, the words are, the most important thing in the world. And in other ways, it's the feeling that we allow ourselves to conduct, which
Yes.
can light us up, and then, give that permission, that invitation for the room to light up too. And realizing that can really set people free from this idea that the words have to be good enough, or that they have to be a good enough person in order to say a good enough thing and get a good enough result. It's really nothing to do with any of that, because that energy is just always there. It's always available for us if we're willing.
It is. It's a presenting or a presenting of your presence. It's trusting that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Dave, would you be up for sharing with us here on the Chi Time Collective one of your free flow poems, or something that you've prepared earlier, or a way of going into a little interlude here for our listeners?
Yes.
Thank you.
I can't unsee your face. I'm 12 years old. Everybody takes turns confessing top 3 crushes on the back of the bus. But I say nothing. My love for you is not a game. I'm 15. I draw diagrams in my diary conclusively proving that everyone is attracted to everyone else, except me. I'm 29. No one's ever moved in me the way you do, you say. Touch that place of lit up buds so fully, so purely, so held me, so lifetimes feeling ugly inside wash away in body fluids, light, and the way that we share what we breathe. I'm 28. You water fight your new lover in the late August sunshine. Everyone choruses the beauty of it, and the peace and the horror wake at the same rate in me. I'm 22. Sketching tiny trees across the nape of your neck, and your whole body cupped in my palm softly heaves you. You say you may leave him. I'm coming. You're going. You're coming. I'm going. We're here now together. We're gone. I'm 24, 18, 12, 31, 63. I want to feel free to want every woman, every man that I meet in this lit up place. I'm 6 years old. Nowhere in the world is safe if I cross him. He tells me I'm 7. Praying to a God I never believed in to tell me why I've done something I didn't do. I'm 4. I know that she'll always take care of me. I am every age, planting every seed, opening every sky, undressed by all hands and burned by all fires, and my body is your body, I'm 5. World reaches towards me unquestioned, I'm 3. They give and withdraw love until the fuses scramble. Eternally, I'm being born, falling away. I remember you. I can't unsee your face.
Oh, pure magic from Dave Rock here on Chi Time. That felt like a multi-dimensional, multi-generational dive through the emotional feelings of being curious and not knowing, and you know, we were saying that how words can mislead, but words can also entrance and invite and make you want to listen to them again, maybe even read them. And what was that piece in there that just lit me up in that moment? What was that? And how you just got rid of linear time. That was genius. One of your favorite words.
Yeah, I love writing that does that in general. It's like it's a power you can't, you know, as a trick, you don't want to do it too much, but
Okay.
you know, yeah, in the right amount, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Thank you, Dave, for sharing that with us here on Chi Time.
Okay.
It's so lovely to experience your magic in the now, in the now. And, you know, I invited you on to talk about what it was like when you lost your voice. So, what was it like to re-find it again?
Yeah, like, you know, I have to say it's not a journey that's, you know, has had an ending
No,
exactly. It's still,
no.
I am able to talk, you know, every day. My voice is not gone anymore, but it is still sore.
Is
And,
it?
you know, the
Okay.
level of soreness does come and go.
Yeah.
Um, so I can't point to, you know, like any one kind of moment where I felt like, oh, okay, it's back now. I can tell you another story.
We do like stories here on She Time.
I was at Boom, which is this enormous psychedelic festival in Portugal, and I was supposed to be speaking. I was on the program, but my voice would just was gone with the dust and the heat and all kinds of things, and I couldn't. But I was walking around the festival looking for my friends, and really just in, you know, this question of like, is it ever going to be normal again for me? I don't know if it had been a year or 2 years at that stage. Maybe this had been going on, and I had cancelled so many things, kept on booking myself in, and I was actually being offered, you know, bigger and bigger gigs in lots of ways, but I had to keep on cancelling so often, and it was so painful. I was wandering around this Boom is really like this dreamland, you know, it's like a whole bunch of neon aliens and angels have just crash landed onto the shores of this lake, and they're all just having a really nice time. And I couldn't find my friends, and I couldn't find my friends, but then I was pulled sideways by this music. And there was this guy on stage, and it looked like he had about a dozen different instruments all on the go at once, and he was playing all of them. It made me think of Neo in the Matrix, you know, when his arms start multiplying and it's like he's able to battle, you know, a dozen guys at once. So this guy was just producing this mind-blowing mosaic of music. And then this woman came out on stage in this emerald green dress with this, I think she had deep red hair, and she started to chant. And she seemed like a priestess more than a singer.
Mm.
And then somebody in what looked like a kimono came out and started to dance across the stage. And there was, you know, like hundreds of naked or half naked, extremely beautiful people all dancing around to it, having the time of their lives. And I was standing stock still in the center of the crowd, just staring up at the man on stage and what he was doing, what the three of them were doing together. And I got this feeling, I had this feeling that even if I could never fully speak again, that I would speak my poetry in silence. And even if I was doing it, from the back of a room and nobody even knew I was there, I would keep speaking my poetry in silence, and that I could do that for the rest of my life and that it could be enough. And that is something that I already knew, because a lot of my most powerful experiences of performing have been when I've been completely alone. Except we're never alone because the world is here. So, when I was younger, I would often go out and I would just speak poetry to the trees, to the sky, to the ground. And I had this real sense of, this is just life talking to life. Not a big deal. It's not about having, an identity as being an artist. It's just life talking to life. And the more often I did that, the more free I felt when I was up on stage with people, because it was just a natural continuation of what's always already happening out here in reality. Everything is always expressing itself. And if I'm always already doing that anyway, then just the fact that I might have hundreds of people in front of me, it doesn't make it in any way more precious or pressured. It's, this is just the current that we're always conducting.
I love
So
that.
having that experience at Boom, I didn't know in my body the truth of that. That is something it can be completely fulfilling. It can be enough. And I sat down on a rock somewhere and I started to write poetry. I was writing something. It was like, I spoke these words in broken churches, holding herd and hope in verse, in flow the soul's the oldest verb, reverberated, heard in ancient sermons cadence, learned that faith must curve the rain. And I was so lit up. Everybody who walked past would just smile at me, because they could feel it. It was like,
Exactly.
whatever was just banging off at me.
Yeah.
Like I had a silent, invisible sound system plugged into my spine or something.
You do.
Yeah, yeah.
I love this, Dave, because it's really bringing home this relationship we have with the Tao, the all that is, the great spirit, or that which cannot be named, but it is part of us that we're in conversation with all the time. And there's such an ease with that communication, because there's no judgment and there's no expectation. We're not looking for adulation or anything like that. It's just, as you say, it's a conversation. And I think when you can give yourself that experience of, say, walking or being in quiet, where you're not having to converse with another person there, then the creativity drops in, stuff that comes in from side. You're just like, whoa, because you weren't expecting it. So
Yeah.
in a way, this dynamic silence is a portal into that true creative vein of that which wants to be birthed through you or in relationship with you. There's magic. Yeah.
No, I think that's totally true. I have to say, I keep forgetting that as well. Those kinds of breakthrough moments that I had there and that I've had many times, that everything feels so clear and so powerful.
Yeah.
And day to day, I can go like long stretches without speaking any poetry, whether out loud or in silence.
Yeah.
And so,
That's part of it as well. It doesn't have to be full on, doesn't it? You just don't want to be all yang, do you? You want to have the yin in.
no, absolutely, I agree. It's not that there's some need to always be doing it, but I'm just trying to be really honest, like in saying, that having that realization didn't magically change everything for me.
Right.
I just experienced life as being a lot more messy and patchy, fluctuating than that. It's always been like that for me.
Do you know what? I think it actually did change something for me when I started to converse more with the universal nature or whatever, because I've been, lived on my own for quite a while now. And though I really like to be in conversation and be in relationship with others, I also was interested in this loneliness piece, because I actually didn't feel lonely when I'm conversing with the bigger powers. But I do find that it's in nature that I feel the most connected, I must say. And it's when I come indoors and there's all this stuff around, I feel like confined. It's almost like I need to get out again. And so that's quite a big thing to acknowledge, that actually I have having my biggest communication with the universe. But having said that, people drop in and also express their aspect of the greater Tao. That is maybe part of the conversation that I was having, or a conversation that I will have with it. We're all in it together, aren't we? Anyway, so you're part of that, the fragments that are coming into my life, and vice versa. So I don't know where I'm going with this. I just thought I'd share it.
No, it's great. What you said is really great, and I think that it's totally true too. Um, and the thing with nature, I think, is there's just nothing in the way.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
The same way it's
can
so easy,
trust it.
like, to love a dog or a cat or a horse or a baby. With nature, there's no inhibitions or self-consciousness or questioning around motivations, or will they love me
Yes,
back? There isn't any of
yes.
that stuff there.
No.
Um, I think most of us really need both, and that they give
Mm.
us really important, really different things. But the more often we go to nature to have that totally unfiltered communication and communion, I think the easier it is to be natural with other human beings,
Yes,
because it takes
indeed.
the pressure away.
Take the pressure. Let's bring this round to the silent reflux again, then, because I think a big part of me realizing that was what was going on with me losing my voice was that about stress and expectation and overriding my natural energy and thinking that I had to achieve certain things, and that pressure, that whole in my solar plexus, and of that anxiety was just building so much. And I'm sure that this is a really key contributing factor to the reflux. It's the rebellious chi, the Chinese medicine doctors would say, the chi that's coming up instead of going down. And when I have acupuncture, that's what they're treating me for, is like the energy needs to go down, the earth energy, the stomach. You need to be able to receive and not always be up and giving. So I think that's a huge component. Stress is massive in our culture, and we're almost trained to be stressy. And I don't want to be like that anymore. That's not who I truly am. Not truly who anybody is. Surely, what? So yeah, what is our true nature? He'll get out into nature and have a little chat, and he'll find out, chatting to a puddle or a daisy or a cow.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. I think that part of the reason why that can be such a huge practice is, like, if you think about it, so often when we go into any conversation with another human being, we're bringing a lifetime of pressures and expectations into that game. Will this person love me? Will they validate my existence? Will I get my, like, parking ticket for this body in this lifetime on earth stamp? There's so many things, and all of us have such a backlog of unsaid things inside of us, all day, every day, always, already, anyway. If we bring that to every conversation that we have, oh, I just stopped myself swearing there. Good to remember. It just makes things very difficult. And so, like, the most powerful practice that I've ever invented for myself is to just take 5, 10, 15 minutes where I just talk. No inhibitions, no filter, no need to make sense, no need for it to be true or untrue, nothing held back. And if I do that, I haven't done this in a while now, to be clear, but if I do that every day, it releases so much of that backlog of built up pressure inside of me. It's like, when I do come to be with a person, I'm not, suddenly trying to save my soul in every conversation, or whatever it might be. It's huge. And that, I think, all human beings, one thing we need so much is space to be crazy in.
Yeah,
And,
expressive.
that can be physically crazy, through movement. It can be
Yeah.
verbally crazy. It can be, creatively crazy. But we need some space to really let the ghosts out on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's spontaneous expression, isn't it? And freedom without any expectation. And as you were saying that about speaking all these words, I got it around sound, because sounding is something we need. We use our voice for sound. Okay, we're using words here, but for me, it's making random sounds that is so needed. And sometimes the sounds are growly, not very nice at all. Yeah, is that like, but that sound needs an expression. Where is it going to go? And then there will be others that come through that are all harmonic and little lilty bits and having little chats and whatever. And I found that a very healing way to regain my voice, and like having not being able to use it properly for quite some time, and then going, well, what does it want to do? Maybe it wants to do something else. Maybe it doesn't want me to fix it into talking all the time, but it does. There's something else. In fact, even just speaking with you here today, Dave, there feels like a freedom is coming around my throat chakra. Just the topics that we've that have come out. It feels like it's been a very like a medicine journey, just sort of chatting with you about this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it does feel really good for me too.
Good. So how can people find out more about you? Where can they go?
Flowspeaking.com is my website. I share a lot of writings on Facebook, and I'm theoretically intending to start making YouTube videos again soon. But yeah, those would be the places to check me out.
Oh, thank you. And it was quite interesting that I thought, I'd been looking at the gastric reflux and the silent reflux and all of that as part of this picture that we're expressing here. And I've got this amazing book. This amazing book called The Acid Watcher's Diet. So if you are suffering from any of the symptoms that we were speaking about, or maybe others, then I can highly recommend this. This is written by Dr. Jonathan Aviv, and I'm going to be looking at the 28-day program and just sort of things that can help to reduce the amount of smattering that goes on the underside of my larynx, because there's something about I thought it was like there's different components to it, but there's this particular enzyme called pepsin that I had no idea about until about 3 days ago. So I think there's this whole, we can look at the symptoms that we have and we can go into like different areas for treatment, but what we're actually looking at is a much bigger picture of how does my voice want to be used now? How can I step away from this pattern of being silenced, and what healing methodology can I give myself as a baseline? So it is useful to know that tomatoes and coffee and garlic and onions actually are going to irritate things, because knowledge is, I was going to say knowledge is power, but in that healing way of power. So I think there is a physiological perspective, but there's also this energetic piece. And if you've got anything to sort of say as we wrap up this episode of the Chi Time Collective, Dave.
Yeah, two things, I guess. One is, I think that, because I've known most of the foods and drinks that irritate my voice for a few years now, but I've still struggled to not consume them quite often. And so working with these things, really working with these things, it all comes back to how are we treating ourselves? How are we relating to ourselves? And if I try to control myself into making changes, I instantly rebel against it and I don't do it. But when if I come back to actually just really feeling the consequences of my decisions, feeling the consequences physically, like how is my body now after that coffee? And feeling them emotionally, like, oh, I actually feel sad and anxious now after that coffee. For example, if we keep doing that, then I think naturally we end up making the choices that are good for us. If we're just willing to really feel what happens to us each time we make a choice, then over time we can really learn to trust ourselves again. So I have, quite a way to go with that journey, but I do believe it is the way. And I'll just say, yeah, if you do have your sore voice a lot, if you've got things with coughing, if you've got struggles breathing, I would look up the symptoms of silent reflux,
Mm,
and it's worth checking out, because if you have it for a long time and it goes untreated, it can be very dangerous.
mm, mm.
So yeah, I'd really encourage people to check.
Definitely, and to get help from your GP as well. I actually have an endoscopy booked in a few weeks' time, which I am not looking forward to, but I know that it's something that will just help, because when things are hidden inside and you can't see what's going on and you have a positive mindset, you might be fooling yourself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's good to get in there. And so, look, I hope that this episode of Chi Time has been useful for you, listening or watching here on YouTube. And thank you, Dave, for sharing your time and space, and certainly not silence with us here.
Hmm. Thank you, Clara. Yeah, pure pleasure. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thanks to everyone out there.
you're welcome. We'll see you next time. So keep your chi up, and thanks so much for listening.